Alrighty, so we're going to start this webinar off with doing some introduction to Experience Builder and how it compares to Web App Builder. Just talking about some of the features that are new to Experience Builder and some things that haven't transitioned yet. And I'm going to do a demonstration of how to transition a sample Web App Builder app to Experience Builder, and then we're going to explore some of the new features in Experience Builder. All right, so some of the new exciting features that are in Experience Builder. It now allows for multi-page apps with fixed or rolling screens. So now we can kind of create more complicated applications. There's also support for 2D as well as 3D data, and it's configurable for mobile and tablet devices. And then one of the most important things about Experience Builder is the data connections that you can create between widgets using the trigger and action processes. And then also it allows for other apps to be embedded within an experience. And so that could be like a Survey 123 form. You could also embed a dashboard or an ArcGIS story map. So a lot of options there. And now some of the functionality that has not transitioned yet from Web App Builder. So one of the biggest ones is the batch attribute editor widget. That's planned for this year, but it hasn't come out yet. So if you have a Web App Builder application that you're thinking about transitioning that uses that tool, I would say maybe hold off transitioning until they come out with that. Another widget is the image measurement widget and the report feature. So these are all, mostly everything is planned to come out in 2024 since they're going to be getting rid of Web App Builder soon. So if you're looking for a way to kind of see how the widgets compare and which widgets have transferred over, there's a great resource on Esri that's their widget functionality matrix. And so they have all the Web App Builder widgets included here, and then they also have the corresponding Experience Builder widgets, and then also if it's an AGO, which version of Enterprise it's in, etc. So let's take another look at that more in depth. So here's the link for that. So as you can see, lots of information. So if you're looking to transition one of your apps, I would definitely take a look at this web page to see to make sure that Experience Builder has all the functionality that you're going to need. And some things have some different names, like the About widget in Web App Builder is now the Window widget, etc. So it's definitely a helpful page that we're going to share the link to all of you that are in the webinar. So now let's move on to the demonstration portion. So here we have just an example of a Web App Builder app that's for a cemetery public search. And so it starts off with just kind of a splash page with some information of how to use the application. And then there's a search bar, and we can search both burials as well as owners. We also have a legend that is open upon loading, and a layers list, which you can switch off and on the layers. And so just for an example, see how it works. If we search, it will zoom in and then provide some information on that grave. So if I was gonna be tasked with transitioning this to Experience Builder, I would first start with going to the web map that corresponds to that Web App Builder application. And so since this is the web map is already configured and stylized to how we want it, this is a great place to start if you're transitioning. So then I'd go to Create Web App, do Experience Builder. So this brings us to kind of that opening page, which has all the templates for Experience Builder. So if I hover over some of these, you'll get some more information about the templates. Some of them are probably recognizable from Web App Builder. They've moved a lot of those templates over here. And so I'm going to choose foldable just to get us started. It's kind of a good outline. It already kind of has the style of the previous web app. So when we open up here, it comes up with that kind of, it automatically brings up a splash screen. So if I was starting, I would probably put in all the information that we saw in the other splash screen in the picture and kind of mimic that. And that is going to be, it's a window instead of the About widget. And so for sake of time, I'm not going to actually end up doing that. But if I put it into live view, this is how you can engage with the app as if you are a user, which is really nice for testing out things. And so over here we have page and window. So window is what we just saw. And then here is our page. And so everything that you see on here is a widget. And so if I take it off of live view, turn off lock layout, you can see this is a text widget in here. We have a text widget, we have an image widget, we have a widget controller, which is kind of like a container that you can have multiple widgets in. And then, so we have a layers, a legend, as well as a search bar, and then the map widget. And so I would start with first adding in the title, maybe moving this a little bit to make some space. Let's see here, Scenic Hill Cemetery Public Search App. Move that over. All right. Point. Alrighty. So now we've added in our text and titles, and now this is a image widget. And so over here, when you click on any of the widgets, over here on the right sidebar, you're going to see the place where you can configure the settings for each of the widget. So in the old app, we just had our logo. So I know that we have a published logo on our AGO that I'm just going to copy that URL, go back into here. And then I can select an image and I'm going to choose URL, put that in. And now we have our logo in here. So there are other options for the image. You can change the shape if you want. You can configure lots of things. You can even set it so that if you were to click on the logo, it would take you to another link that you've set. And then over here, we have the widget controller. So if I click here, I get the widget controller settings. But then if I click on the widgets that are in the controller, such as the map layers, that'll come up with more of the settings, same with the legend. And so since we brought this in with a web map and a template that we'd already chosen, these are already set up to be connected to the map. But let's say if you were just bringing in a map layers widget, you'd go to the plus sign, do search, and then you would just click and drag this in here. But when it comes in, it's actually empty because hasn't been configured yet. And so you would configure that over here and select the current map to actually see those layers. So there are other things you can do with configuring the map layers. You can go over here to customize, enable customization, and then we can choose which layers we want to be visible. And then also over here in the settings, we can do use tick boxes to control layer visibility. So now we're getting closer to what the previous web app looked like. And then over here we have the legend. And if we remember with this in the old app, the legend was open upon loading the app. And so we want that same functionality over here. And so if I click on the widget controller, we can change this by doing open widgets on loading. So I'm going to choose the legend so that it'll be open when we load the page. And then down here we have some further settings such as being able to move the position. And so let's say you wanted to click here and then have the legend open up to the right or in the middle. And so I'm going to have it over on this side. And then we can also change the height and width. And I like to choose percentages. This is kind of like the percentage of the page that you're working with. So I'm going to make the width a little bit smaller and change the height to about 98. All right, so now we've got kind of that size that we wanted. And so if we wanted to actually test if it does open up on load, I'm going to save. And then I'm going to hit preview. So this allows you to actually see the experience, how it would be if you were just a user. So now we can see that the legend is already open upon loading the page, which is exactly how it is in the Web AppBuilder app. So we'll close out of that. All right, so now we're going to configure the search bar. So in the old web app, there were multiple layers that it could search, burials and owners. So we're going to bring that over here as well. So if we were to try and search something right now, there's actually no data that the search bar is connected to, and it's not connected to the map. And so if we want to add the data, we'll click on the search, have it come up over here, and then we're going to add a layer source. So I'm going to choose the burials. Comes in with the label, and then we can choose which field out of that layer we want to search. So I'm going to choose full name to show people that are buried here. And for the display field, I'm also going to choose full name. All right. I'm going to change the search hint, search burials. All right, but now we also want it to be able to search the owner names. So I'm going to add another layer. Going to select owners, and I'm going to change the label so we don't see the demo part of it, just owners. I'm going to change the search field to owner name, and the display field also to owner name. Change the hint, search owners. Perfect. And so if we look at this now, we now have like a drop down, but the search text is still saying find address or place, even though we changed those hints. And that's because we only changed the search hints to be for the individual layers. So if I just click on owners, it shows up correctly. Same with burials. So if I want to actually change that, we'll go to the general search options and change the search hint here. All right. So now that's looking pretty good. Another thing I'm going to add, this wasn't in the original app, but I think it could be helpful to add. So I'm going to add another widget to the widget controller. So if we click on the widget controller, it comes up with these options, and I'm going to do add a widget. I'm going to search, print. So now we have this print widget, and as you can see, it's not connected to anything. And so we're going to go back over here, we're going to select the current map, and then I'm going to select utility and click printing. So now it's going to come up with print templates, and these ones we can delete or add different templates so that the user can actually choose which template they want to print. So we could just do the map or do all these other options. All right. Now another thing that this app did was that when you search a name, it comes up with a pop-up of information. And we can do that same thing here, but I'm actually going to change it up a little bit to make that information a little bit more visible. So I'm going to take this map widget. I'm just going to move it over a little bit. And then I'm going to add a feature info widget. Put that here. Have it. And then when you see the red line, that's how you know it's fitting into the space and not overlapping. All right, so if I click on the feature info widget, I'm going to select the data that I want to be in this widget. And we have a layer in this web map that is a joined layer of the burials and the owners. And so that's going to have both the information from those two layers. And so I'm going to use that layer to populate this widget so we can actually see all the information at once. So we can see owner name as well as the full name of who's buried there. And so now that we've added it, we can see information, we can flip through this whole feature layer, but unfortunately, it's not connected to the map or anything right now, or to the search. And so we're going to change it so that when we use the search bar, it's going to have a trigger and action, where if I search a name here, it's going to trigger this information that is associated with that burial to show up here. And so this is one of the main components of Experience Builder, is that trigger and action component. And I just realized actually with a search, we also need to trigger an action for it to zoom on the map as well. So if I search a name here and click here, see nothing actually happens because when we set up the search bar, we put in the data, but we didn't actually add a trigger and an action. So if I go over here to the search configurables and I select action, I'm going to add a trigger. And I'm going to do record selection changes. First, I'm going to do map and then zoom to. And so now the trigger data is the layers we've set up in the search, the burials and the owners. And so now when I zoom, or when I search, it should go to that location on the map. So let's test it out. Alrighty, so now it goes to that location, which is exactly what we wanted it to do. And when I type it in, it comes up with suggestions, and then it comes up with results, and I have to double click that to actually get it to select. So if we want to change that so you don't have to click as much, I'm going to go over here to the search results and then do auto select the first result so that when I type in a name and I search, it will auto select that first result and zoom to that location. Okay, now let's get back to the feature info widget. So we want to connect the search to the feature info widget. And first what we're going to do is change the source, to just be selected features. So if I don't have anything selected, it's just going to say no data found over here. And then I'm going to go to the search, go to action, and I'm going to add another trigger. Actually, I'm going to add another record selection changes trigger. So this time I'm going to choose framework. So framework has to do more with like the table data that is with your feature layer. So now I'm going to do select data records, do trigger data, and I'm going to choose one of the search layers that we have. So I'm going to do burials, action data, and then I'm going to choose the data that is in here, which is that join layer. And since these two layers are different, we need to have a field that will actually connect them so that one will trigger the other. And so I'm going to choose facility ID because I know that both of these layers have that field. Facility ID. So now when we search a burial, we should have information be populated in this feature info widget. Perfect. So now it's zoomed to the right location, selected it, and then any of the features in that join layer that have the same facility ID as the one that we searched will show up here. So then we can see all the different people that are buried in this lot. And then we want to do the same thing so that when we search an owner, it will also bring up information here. Because right now it's only configured to search the burials and show up with information here. So we'll follow the same steps that we just did. Do another add action framework, select data records, select data, and then we're going to choose owners instead for the trigger data. And then for the action data, we're going to choose that join features layer, and then facility ID. Facility ID. So now if I search an owner, it should also come up with information over here. All right, so now the owner name was Purdy, and then we also got the other information for the people in that grave. So now we've got a pretty nice looking app that mimics the Web AppBuilder application, and we've even added some features to make it a little bit more user-friendly. And so now that we've gone through this demonstration, I also wanted to go over some of the new features that are in Experience Builder. So this is another demo app that I made, and the first page will be pretty familiar. It's the same page that we just created. And so if I go into live view, I've also added two other different pages in here. And so if I click on these buttons, it's going to bring me to a whole nother page. So for this one, this brings me to a survey 123 form that I created. And so there's a whole, so what's exciting about Experience Builder is that you can actually embed whole other apps. And so this was a survey widget where if I go here and type in survey, then I can actually drag this in and bring in a whole other survey. And I can select them from my AGO, etc. And then I have another button that brings me back to the home page. And then we have a third page that is for an editor. So if I click this button, it brings me to another page where I can actually edit the data. And so this is the editor widget, which you'd bring in similar way as the other widgets. And then you would configure it to be with this map and then which layer you'd want. And you can configure how you want the data to be edited. And then also if you wanted to use the web map settings. And so for the editor widget, if you wanted to have certain fields or use Arcade to populate fields, you'd actually configure that in the web map forms, and then those would actually show up here, whatever changes you made to the forms. And then we can go back to the home page. And something to note between the pages is that if you create pages, you also have to create a way to go between them. And so if we didn't have these buttons, there'd be no way for the user to get to the other pages. And so to create a button, I go here, click X, button, and then I could add a button similar to these. You can add text, and then you can set the link. So I've set these buttons to go to the different pages. So you can choose different things for the buttons to lead you to. It could be a URL to a different web page, but in this case, I've chosen page so that it actually will go to these pages. And then I've set it up so that each one of these also has a button that will return to the home page. Another thing I wanted to go over that's new in Experience Builder is the configuration for tablets and mobile devices. So here you can configure for desktop web screen sizes, but you can also configure for a tablet. So if I take it off a live view, I can choose between auto and custom. And so I chose custom so that I could actually move around these widgets and configure them for a tablet size screen. And so if I move these widgets here, it's not going to move anything here. It's just going to configure it for the tablet. And so I've moved the feature info widget down here. I moved the button so that things can just fit a little bit better on that smaller screen size. But you can do the same things as you can do with the desktop. And so the same thing I did with the mobile app, where I've configured the widgets to fit a little bit better on here, but it still has the same functionality. So this is great if you're expecting your users to be using your applications on their phones or on tablets, especially if it's like a public app. Okay. Well, I think that is everything that I have to share. And if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, yep, that was a great overview. So so essentially I'm laughing because we've got essentially the same question asked a couple times, but so I'm just going to kind of boil it down to one. Um, is there any quicker way to do this, or do all apps, basically web app builder apps, just need to be manually recreated with Experience Builder?
I believe for right now they manually have to be
Yeah,
recreated. And so like you have those templates that can kind of get you to a good place for for this one, it kind of gave us the exact setup that we already had. But yeah,
yeah,
as far as configuring each widget, I believe you
yeah.
still have to do that. There's no like quick fix to just bring it over
Yeah,
and everything connected.
yeah, so please don't shoot the messenger. I was actually talking with some reps from Esri about this in Wisconsin last week at their state conference. And yeah, unfortunately, right now it kind of is what it is. Like Haley mentioned, the templates are really going to be your best spot to start from. Hey, let's grab one more. We got one more real quick. how do you make it so you can configure each desktop resolution size without the edits moving in the other resolutions? Oh, it's pretty specific.
Yeah, sometimes like with here, like see how if I change that now, this will kind of be scrunched up. And you can either like move things around so that in this size, it's going to work, and then hopefully in this one it will also work, and it's kind of a lot of trial and error.
Mm,
But there's also different ways where you could have started, if you didn't start with a template, you could have added like a where is it? Um like a fixed panel where if you add these, you could have all of these widgets within this fixed panel, and there are ways that you can have padding. So if you're familiar with web design, it's kind of similar where you can actually try to change it so that percentage, like there'll be padding between the widgets, and that hopefully it will maintain that along the different screen sizes. I have found it to be a little bit finicky where I've done that and I've thought it should work, and it can still be a little bit messed up. So I'll usually just kind of go between these and try to find the best compromise that will work with all of these screen sizes. But it's a good place to start though, because you can kind of change the percentage of like what a widget size is going to be. So if you change it to being 30% width, then it should maintain 30% width in all of the different sizes.